Thanks, Dave. So I'm going to be talking about feedback today, and I know all of you recognize that feedback is really critical for driving growth in a company, that being responsive to the feedback of customers is the key to unlocking growth in a business. What I'm going to talk about today is that not all feedback is created equally, that some feedback is really important at certain stages in your business, and other feedback becomes a lot more important at other stages. So focusing on the right feedback at the right time is super critical. And I'll talk about some things that we did at companies like Dropbox, Eventbrite, LogMeIn, where we took feedback and ultimately accelerated growth with that feedback. And the holy grail, I think, of just about any company is to have a big customer evangelist-driven word-of-mouth engine to drive growth, and feedback is really essential for getting there. So one thing that when people originally start thinking about feedback, they tend to jump into, they tend to just gravitate toward the problem. So somebody says, I don't like this about your product, or I don't like that about your product, and it feels really good to just kind of jump on those little problems and fix them and jump from one to the next. That's not really the right way to be thinking about feedback. From a growth perspective, you're looking for love. You're looking for those people who love your product, are passionate about your product, can't live without your product, and those people hold the keys to really unlocking growth and building a big business. So problems come into it a little bit. We'll talk about when they come into it, but just on a high level, you're trying to find those passionate people who can't live without your product. They're the really important ones. And then just one little trap to look out for, the people who say, I would love you if only, that's like the comic that you've seen lots of times where it's, I'm going to change this person after I marry them. I'm going to change the product. It's unconditional. Either people love the product or they probably never will love the product. So if you can find some signal of people who are really passionate about your product, that's the great place to start. So as I mentioned, feedback, it becomes really stage dependent on which feedback you should be paying attention to. So when I was working with a lot of companies in interim VP marketing roles in the early stages, I really broke down kind of a model of 3 stages of growth within a business. The first is just product market fit, trying to get to product market fit. The second was more of a growth transition stage, and then finally that ongoing growth stage that hopefully most companies get to and stay in. So product market fit is what we'll cover first, and the feedback that's important for getting there. So a couple of the earlier presentations reference product market fit. We all hear about it. I'm assuming most people understand what it is, but just in a nutshell, it's a large group of people really want your product or need your product, and ultimately consider it a must-have. If they consider it a must-have, that's product market fit. Hopefully they represent a big market. Then you have product market fit of the type that a VC would be interested in putting money into. So in my experience, product market fit is the single most important factor in driving sustainable growth. So without product market fit, most growth fizzles out. So this is a really important place to start focusing on feedback. So a lot of the early feedback that you can look at really starts from the minute you come up with a business idea, validating that feedback. So making sure, validating that the problem exists. So making sure that when you are getting started, just if you're building a solution around a problem that doesn't exist, you're not going to be able to grow that business. So this is really foundational, and I know it's not as exciting as some people would like to focus in a growth conference, but ultimately, product market fit is such a determinant on growth, and product market fit starts with solving the right problem, understanding the current solutions that somebody's applying to that problem. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, don't worry, but I just think it's so foundational that it's important. So, and then partnering with customers to build your solution kind of every step of the way. And this type of feedback really just happens through conversations. So talk to your customers every day. I think when I was at LogMeIn, so it was almost, what was it? It was kind of 2003, 2004 when we were just getting started with it, and one of our venture capitalists essentially said, every day I talked to him, he said, "Did you talk to a customer today?" He used to just drive that into me, and so I had to be able to say yes, so I started talking to customers every day just to kind of get them off my back. And it turned out that I got actually really useful information, and I think that was really critical for being plugged in and not just kind of going through the motions, but ultimately making sure that the solution that we were building and how we were acquiring customers was tied to real things I was learning about the customers we were trying to bring in. So talk to customers every single day, talk to prospective customers every single day, and ultimately, product market fit, there's a threshold that I like to talk about that just based on working with a lot of companies and finding those companies that are relatively easy to grow versus impossible to grow, there's a threshold that I found that when I ask this question, I can identify companies that are sort of at that point where they have enough product market fit where you can sustainably grow them. And the question is, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? You're looking for the people who answer very disappointed. I actually just had somebody, I think it was yesterday, say to me, and he's probably here today, but he said, well, we're this product that I'm working on, it's above 40% on very disappointed, which is great, but the really impressive thing is that when you add somewhat disappointed, it goes to 90%. And he was sad for me, sad when I said, just ignore somewhat disappointed. It doesn't mean anything. That's the nice to have portion of your customer base, and those people really don't matter. Those people you can't build a business, a nice-to-have product. You must build a business on a must-have product. So focus on the very disappointed. If you're less than 40%, the good news is it's not the end of the world. Just iterate on that must-have feedback. So the people who say they'd be very disappointed without your product, how are they using the product? What's the key benefit that they're getting from the product? Why did they seek your solution originally? And what other alternatives did they consider when they were going out to find your product? So when you look at the feedback from those people who'd be very disappointed without the product, and you understand those things, and you start to reorient it around that type of signal, you're going to be in a much better position to ultimately get to product market fit. So I had one company, and you might need a lot of patience. It might take several months if you're not a founder of a company and you're a marketer and you've got really weak product market fit, there's probably a better place where you can apply your efforts. So probably not what you want to hear, but the good news is sometimes that you can get there pretty quickly. So I had one company that in 2 weeks we moved from a weak product market fit situation to a strong product market fit situation. When I went in, first thing I did was I ran this survey, and 7% of the users said that they'd be very disappointed without the product. And the good news is that when we really drilled into those 7%, they were using the product differently than the people who said that they'd be somewhat disappointed or wouldn't be disappointed. They focus on a different benefit. They focus on sort of a different use case. And so just reorienting around that benefit and really the flows, getting people to come in and use the product, so setting the right expectations, highlighting that benefit, and then kind of taking any of the prompts to use the product differently off of the screen. The next cohort of people who we surveyed were over 40%. That company today is pushing $1 billion valuation. Last I knew, they were at 60% of the users who'd be very disappointed. So that was 2 weeks. So it's not the end of the world if you're low, but just realize that, again, to that original slide, you're looking for love. Really focus on the people who'd be very disappointed without the product. Orient everything around those people, and you can get to product market fit. If you don't have product market fit and you try to grow the business, you might be able to do it for a while, but you're going to crater. So I highly recommend that product market fit, again, single most important factor in driving sustainable growth. Really focus on getting there. So assuming that you get there, then there's a set of feedback that becomes a lot more important around the growth transition stage. So what you're trying to do in this stage, you've got product market fit, so you've got this must-have experience that the product delivers. Now you're worried about what is the process of delivering that must-have experience? How do I create a machine, a repeatable engine for getting people to that experience? And if I can do that, the business is going to be even more growable. So actually, James talked a lot about this, and I think this is a really critical point, just feedback for describing and positioning the product. What's great is this is all crowdsourced. Your customers hold the keys to being able to really tap into what your product is good at doing and to being able to grow the business. So when recommending, how would you describe it? The way that I actually ask that question is, have you recommended this product before? If they say yes, I say, how did you describe it? What's really interesting is that if I ask a CEO what their business does, I get really confused about what their business does. And then I'm the same way. If you ask me what my business does, you would be pretty confused about it. But if I ask customers how they describe it when they recommend it, I can look at 10 write-ins, and in like 1 minute, I can go, oh, okay, that's what the business does. So it's really important for just learning. And then particularly if you're paying attention to how they describe it, those people who would be very disappointed without the product. And again, back to this question, what is the primary benefit that you receive? So you want to make sure that you're highlighting that benefit, setting the right expectations, and driving people to what the product is actually going to really do for them. And then the context that you get on this type of question. So a lot of this you can just get through a long-form survey. I have a lot of these questions on something called survey.io that I originally did with Kissmetrics, but they're all pre-formatted. You can copy them into SurveyMonkey, or you can run it right from there. But why is that benefit important to you? When somebody tells you what benefit that they're getting, that's helpful, but when you ask why it's important, you're going to get a lot more context. So like when I worked with Zobni, we had a lot of people say that the benefit that they were getting was that they could find things fast in their email. So the search, it's either through the search or it was right there in the sidebar. But when we asked why it was important, why that benefit was important to them, they kept saying, I'm drowning in email. And so once we realized the problem that the product was having for them, or was solving for them, then we could highlight that problem in messaging. So we would say like drowning in email, ? And we'd create this awesome context to where we could say find things faster in your email. It doubled the response rate versus if we just said find things faster in your email. So understanding why the benefit's important to them is really important. And again, focusing on the answers from the people who can't live without your product. So people who consider it a must-have are the signal you really want to focus on. Intent is another really important part of feedback. So to me, intent is probably the most powerful force that we as marketers have to work with. If you think about the average person is seeing about 3,000 advertisements a day. It's system overload if they actually tried to process those advertisements. But intent is an actual reach out by that person to go and find something. That person's opening their mind and being receptive to something. So if you don't tap into that, you're missing a big opportunity. So understanding what the intent is when somebody comes to your website is going to give you a lot of insight in being able to get that benefit message to them. So just ask visitors who come to the website what they want. So you can just pop up a question that says, what are you hoping that this product can do for you? And having that type of information gives you that great door to be able to set a hook where you can get your benefit statement right into them. So, and then friction. So there's going to be, I think actually the presentation right after mine is going to be about conversion rate optimization. So some of this touches on that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but user testing is a great way to identify some friction. So just as give somebody a task to perform on your website, as they go try to perform that task, they don't even have to be your target customer. If they know what task you're giving them to perform, they can tell you what's confusing. They won't necessarily tell you the fears that's preventing them from doing something, but they can tell you why they don't know how to do that thing. So usertesting.com is great for that. They have Peak as a free service that they now offer for 5-minute tests. And then survey on your success page, what almost stopped you. So when somebody signs up, somebody purchases, just ask the question on the success page, what almost stopped you, and you can find out people who are probably qualified because they did the action that you wanted them to do, but being able to ask them what almost stopped them from completing that action becomes a really good signal. And then exit intent surveys. So it's, that middle one that I just said about what almost stopped you is kind of closer to asking your must-have people. But the exit intent can also be pretty helpful. So I had one company where we had a ton of people who were signing up for a product, and then they were dropping off at the download page. All kinds of tests where we were trying to improve that didn't work, but being able to just ask a question, what's preventing you from downloading the software? They said they didn't believe that the product was free. Our next test tripled conversion rates. So really understanding what's stopping somebody can be important. And so again, it's just pop up a question as they go to abandon a page with something like, before you go, one quick question. If you decided not to purchase today, if you decided not to sign up today, what was it that stopped you? Just that open-ended feedback can be super useful. So that's this is probably the only problem question or problem feedback that I would be focused on. It's the UX issues or the unaddressed concerns that are stopping qualified people from getting to that experience with your product. And then ultimately what you're trying to do is just tune that value delivery machine. So you created a must-have experience, you have product market fit, now you're trying to have this fine-tuned machine that's going to drive efficient customer acquisition. So you want to address that intent first, have a really clear description based on how would you describe this product when recommending it, and a strong, authentic promise. That promise statement is really the benefit that describes the must-have experience. So people can't live without your product. What is the benefit that they're getting? You want to build a good, strong promise statement off of that, set the right expectations for what the product's going to do for them, and then address the fears and the UX issues, and just keep iterating on that, and you'll really be able to fine-tune your value delivery. So just one, how this ties into growth. I'm trying not to name companies because I don't think they appreciate it, but it's one of the companies that I said earlier on the value delivery machine. We originally were trying to grow that business through search engine marketing. We could spend about $10,000 a month with a positive return on investment, tested a ton of different keywords, and we just couldn't scale beyond that $10,000 a month. When we actually looked, it was like the majority of people who were signing up for the product were never actually using the product. There was too much friction to get to their first use on the product, and so it's really hard to cost effectively spend money when your funnel's so leaky that everybody's falling out. So we did about 4 months of just obsessive iteration doing the things that I talked about. So really tapping into the intent, really understanding the friction through the funnel, and just improve. We had enough improvement in that funnel to where we went back, tested the exact same keywords that previously tapped out at $10,000. We were able to scale to over $1 million a month on spending on the exact same keywords with a 3-month ROI and investment. So $1 million a month, profitably spending that money, recycling that same $1 million. Company's a public company today worth over $1 billion, and we wouldn't have gotten there if we were not obsessive about removing that friction from the funnel, building enough desire and momentum by tapping into their intent, really highlighting the right promise, and so really, really important. So, and then the last step, the scaling growth. Again, scaling growth is irrelevant if you don't have product market fit. It's irrelevant if you don't have an efficient value delivery engine to get people to that product market fit experience. But assuming you have those things, then you want to acquire the right people in the right way. So some of the feedback that can be really useful here is just asking, how did you discover the product? You're going to see some of that through analytics as well. So if you can get the source data on people. But the best signal on what's going to work is what's already working. So if you can really figure out how people are coming in and discovering a product, then you can optimize those channels. So that was really important at Dropbox, where we saw word of mouth was driving a lot of people into Dropbox. We saw shared folders, shared files were driving a lot of people in. Ultimately, those are the main channels that still drive a lot of people into Dropbox today, but they've been hyper optimized since early asking that question and figuring out that was the growth vector for that business. And then looking not just in your own product, but beyond. So how do you generally discover whatever your product category is? So Airbnb is kind of famous for plugging into the Craigslist ecosystem in the early days to drive a lot more demand for properties listed on Airbnb. That's a really easy question to discover that that's the right place. So how do you normally find tenants for your properties? How do you normally find properties? Okay, it's all happening at Craigslist. Let's make sure that we're tapping into that potential channel as a platform to drive demand into our business. There may have been some terms of service issues there, so I'm not necessarily advocating that that's a great growth program, but you can sort of see where something like that could come from just by getting feedback from users. For growthhackers.com, one of the first things that we did was we asked, how do you normally find news about growth and marketing? And people said it was happening on Twitter. So first thing we did was we went to Facebook, and we really optimized that. No, we didn't. We went to Twitter, of course. So like being receptive that that's the channel through which we can grow. All of our growth has happened through Twitter. That's the only channel that we focus on because that's where it was happening, and it's become a great way to distribute content that is being put onto Growth Hackers. And then, again, back to that, as I mentioned earlier, why is that key benefit important to you? Like in the case of Zobni, just in some of that messaging, just, you know, if you can find that, like in Zobni's case, I'm drowning in email, that can tell you that somebody's going to be most receptive to the promise of what the product will do for them at the point in which they're experiencing that problem. So that's going to give you more ideas on potentially where to reach someone if you can kind of really understand the context of when they're feeling the pain the most. And then the last thing I want to do is just emphasize that word of mouth in every company that I've worked with has been the dominant channel in driving growth. So word of mouth is the, you know, just an evangelist-driven growth engine is really what you're shooting for. It's well over half the users in each of the companies I worked with. We also did deep dives. Morgan Brown and myself did deep dives, and some of the rest of the Growth Hackers team did it, where we did really long studies of each of the companies that are listed on here, and overwhelmingly, just pure word-of-mouth growth was the thing that's driven a ton of growth in each of these companies. And so we highlight those in a book called Startup Growth Engines. But you know, the punchline of the book is that word-of-mouth is super powerful. Iterating on product market fit, making sure that even if you've got the threshold where you can grow, any investment in getting better and better product market fit is going to unlock more and more organic word-of-mouth growth. So just make sure that you're continuing to hammer away on product market fit as you're building channels. So I'm actually going to open it up for like 2 minutes of questions, 1 minute of questions. So anybody have a question for me? Yep. So her question is, what feedback should we not listen to? If I said not all feedback is created equally, I think it would be really that feedback from people who don't like your product right now saying, if your product did X, Y, Z for me, this would be a great product. Or I'm really frustrated because this product doesn't do X. And then you find out that they don't care that much about your product. Like investing time to meet the needs of people who don't already love the product is going to likely send you down the wrong path. And that, you know, I think particularly for earlier stage startups, the whole foundation of a good startup is being a problem solver. And so there's just a natural tendency to want to just go and put out all the negative feedback fires, but that's not nearly as good as just doubling down on the people who love your product already and learning everything you can about them. So in the back there?
Hi. I think a lot of what you said is so spot on. And when I think about my crazy evangelist users, they're kind of weirdos. Like, I'm worried I'm going to run out of them eventually. So how do you address that?
So so with the live stream, I'm asked to repeat some of the questions. So this is going to be the last one, unfortunately. But if I'm answering the question correctly, some of your most passionate evangelist-driven users are a bit sort of edge case wackos to some degree, of which case there may not be necessarily a whole market of those people. Yeah. You know, I think that you may not be creating people with necessarily quite the same passion, but the signal that you can get from any group of super passionate people is ultimately going to tell you the features that they're using, the benefit that they're getting, the problem that they had in the first place, the initial intent that they had. Like the signal that you're getting from them is so much of a stronger signal than guessing how am I going to create passionate users that aren't like those people. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I have my Twitter. I've gotten the X that keep things on track, but I have my Twitter name up there if you want to fire a tweet at me with a question, or growthhackers.com has an Ask GH that I'll also look for. So thank you, everybody.